All right. Hello, everyone. Hello, Kay. Thank you for being here. So my name is Patricia Meredith, and I am an author of historical mystery and cozy mysteries. And this is my husband, Andrew D. Meredith, who writes epic fantasy. And we are here today with one of our dear friends. I was thinking the other day, we've known each other for a year, right, Tori? I think it's been a little over a year.
It's weird that it's that short, honestly.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. So about a year ago, we crossed paths with the wonderful, the marvelous, the extremely talented Tori Tecken. Yay! And we were so excited because now, today, we get to talk to her, not as a booktuber, but as an author, because she's publishing her newest book, The Bloodstones, which comes out on not next Tuesday, but the following Tuesday. Yeah. Yes. There it is. Beautiful.
Yes.
Wow. And who did the cover?
Sarah Ferrari, also known as Sparrow Springs on Twitter and YouTube, and her website.
Yes, definitely check her out. She's got an amazing YouTube channel where she talks about all sorts of things art related. And then she's on social media and everywhere. And she's so talented. And she did Andrew's new cover too.
Yeah.
Which is gorgeous.
Yes. Love it.
More to come.
Yes. She'll be doing more covers there too. But we are here to talk to Tori. So the only book that we had previously from her was Phased. When did Phased come out, Tori?
November, end of October 2020.
2020. Okay. Did you write this one like during COVID, or was it?
I started it in November. No, when did I start it? Well, it was a Nano 2019 novel. I had kind of putzed with it a little bit prior to Nano, and then I finished it Nano and in December that year. So it was, the first draft was done before COVID hit, and then I sent it to my editor and rewrote it.
Okay.
During COVID. Yeah.
And then Sarah did the cover for this one too.
She did. Yep. That was the cover where I gave her kind of my vision for it. And she said, I don't know if I can draw people.
Yes, she can.
So
it's gorgeous. So
I think we've
covers up people
exactly. And they're amazing.
Exactly.
So yeah. So that was her foray into human cover characters.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Now Phased is considered YA.
It's all yes, with a caveat. Yeah. It's very dark YA. And I think I've had a couple of conversations with people where there's a difference between YA as we've kind of learned to define it as a culture now versus young adult. And I think that that's an important distinction because I consider mine dark young adult, where it has younger protagonists and it's a much closer kind of world concerned in the story. And then, but it is minus all of the very, in my opinion, kind of shallow, toxic YA themes that we see in a lot of YA, not all, because there are some incredible YA books, but
exactly,
yeah.
Well, like having read it, I would put it more on the Stranger Things side.
Yes,
YA, which is not a YA versus Wednesday, even though it's a great comp for it. Wednesday was a YA show.
Yes,
absolutely.
Okay. Yep.
Whereas
it was
Stranger
good.
Things is not. It just happens to take place in the 80s with kids, but it is not a YA story.
Yes.
And Phase is much more on that end.
Right. So I just wanted to clarify that because Bloodstones is absolutely
is
adult.
Not YA. No. Bloodstones is my first adult fiction, technically speaking.
Okay.
And it's kind of it's still a little surreal to be at this point and having these interviews and conversations now because it's been in the works for so long that it's just like, I can't believe we're actually it's like real and stuff.
So when did you start working on Bloodstone?
Let's go all the way back to the very beginning.
Yes. So I'm going to separate the world from Bloodstone specifically as a story, because the world I started drawing maps and percolating after I had started reading epic fantasy in college, and I read Mistborn and I read Karen Miller's Hammer of God trilogy, and then I was handed Gardens of the Moon by Stephen Erickson, and I went, And it just, I think, leveled up my expectations of what fantasy could look like and how vast the scope could be. Right. And I mean, I'd grown up on the Lord of the Rings films and, you know, the BBC Narnia and a lot of that kind of stuff. So it's not like I was new to fantasy as a concept, but it just was I was so excited after reading Malazan about the possibilities. And I started drawing maps and I started taking notes and building cultures and started designing a language and, like, you know, all of the fantasy things. And I had paper just taped all over the landing on the upstairs of our rented house when we were in college. And it was literally covered, all the walls. And the story that I started back then, I kind of worked on, wrote a draft for, and then realized I just wasn't, I don't know if I'm ready to go back to this yet. I was in college, got married, had children, and it kind of just sat and waited. Mm-hmm. And then last year, after I wrote Phased, joined this incredible indie community and met authors like you guys and quite a few of my other now author friends. And suddenly I realized I had a community behind me, and that really changed everything. And I was like, I think I'm ready to write this now. Phased was kind of a necessary, I needed to have the experience of writing Phased first. And then I was confident in my ability to find my voice again now as an adult writer and pick up my epic fantasy. And so I started, I'm trying to nutshell it as much as possible. I started working on the backstory of the series that I started 12 years ago, and realized that there was a trilogy prior that I wanted to write prior to the series from college. Mm-hmm. And that's where Legends of the Bruhai showed up.
Oh, okay.
So
it's actually kind of a prequel.
It is. Yeah. It's its own thing. It's a standalone trilogy. Like you can read it as its own contained story, but the idea of it was, and where the title of the trilogy comes from, is I'm kind of establishing some of the myths and legendary characters for the following series.
Okay.
So Legends of the Bruhai, and then the second series takes place about half a generation later.
Oh, okay. All right. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, cool. So Kay says, I agree with her. Steven Erikson is the only author I know that can somehow immerse, invest, and confuse readers all at once.
It's a skill set.
Goals is to be like Erikson? Sorry.
Yes and no. I'm a firm believer in the fact that our influences help shape who we are as authors, and then it's our job to discover who we are on our own.
Absolutely. Find your own voice.
So, I mean, I will never reach the level of just world building that Erikson pulls off, because that's not in my particular skill set. Mm-hmm. I'm more of an emphasis on the emotional and the character and the, you know, and I lean more heavily to that side, whereas Erikson kind of finds this balance between the plot and the characters and the world building that is really impressive. But yeah, I mean, he and Pierce Brown is a big influence with the Red Rising series. Jack London's White Fang, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Right. So just, and I'm a huge fan of K-dramas, and you'll see a lot of influence for that in here. Mm-hmm. So just kind of taking all of those things and just kind of internalizing them all and absorbing them, and then figuring out, okay, from all of this, what story do I want to tell? Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and Bert said he doesn't love a good map, and I was wondering, yes, can you show us?
Yes, I actually think I have the. I'll see if I can get Ben to come in here, because I have the original map that I did 12 years ago, literally like 5 feet that way, and it's huge. Like I taped a bunch of pieces of paper together and everything, but yeah, I have the. The map that Sarah did. Hey, can you hand me that tube with the map in it over there? So here's the this one. And this is very close to the original map that I drew. So it's very cool to see the finished product of it. But this is the original from 12 years ago, and I never finished it, but it has all of the names of things are the same. It's generally the same layout of the continent, and it's all pretty much the same.
So Sarah did the map too in the book.
She did the one in the book. Yep. Wow. So I gave her, took a picture of the one that I had done and said, "Here's this. Now, can you make it look prettier?"
Wow.
Yeah.
Is there other art inside of the book?
Yes. So for the paperback version, we also have, there are in Katesh, which is our main country that we are in for most of the book, they have the first runes, which is their magic system, part of their magic system. So this is a glossary of the runes and what they look like. And then in every part, there's 3 parts of the book. And in each one, there is a wraparound of the cover as a kind of illustration in between each one. So there's those. And then once we do the hardcover for next year, we're talking about some other extra illustrations that'll be in that version.
It looks so cool.
It does. I'm really happy with it.
Oh my goodness. So beautiful. It's so nice that you know an artist.
It is. Yeah. She and I have been creating stuff together since we were 13, 14. So it's been kind of cool that we've both been able to grow up in our art forms together. Mm-hmm. And like, I've dabbled in art and she's starting to dabble in writing some more now. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, it's been very cool to share that.
That's awesome. So what is your background as an author? Yeah, is there more phased?
Yes. So I started writing poetry. Well, okay. My mother somewhere in her house still has, I wrote a story about a dog family when I was like 6, I think.
Yeah.
And colored and illustrated it myself. I'm glad that Sarah's illustrating for me now. And I started writing poetry probably 8 or 9, I think. And, love poetry. I'm still a huge poetry fan. And then started reading just voraciously. And I was about 11 or 12, I think. And I was reading every horse series that existed at the library and was like, I don't know if I like how this story ended, or I think I could do that. So I started writing horse books when I was 12, and at age 14, my parents and I decided to try publishing it as a kind of a homeschool project.
Yeah.
And we thought, this will be cool. We'll have a copy of the book. It'll be great. And that'll be the end of it. Yeah. And that wasn't the end of it. And after giving copies to friends and family, all of a sudden people we didn't know were asking for the book. And I was asked to come speak at a library, and I was asked to come and speak to a public classroom of like advanced reader kids. And then everybody's like, well, where's number 2? And it just kind of spiraled crazily quickly. And I ended up publishing 9 books between the ages of 14 and 19. Wow. And we traveled all over the country. I did motivational speaking at conferences and young writers conferences. And it was kind of wild.
Well, you get into BookTube, into doing that.
Much later. Yeah. Much later. Yeah. BookTube, I didn't start until January 1st, 2020, actually. So, yeah. So, yeah, but I've definitely utilized a lot of things that I've learned, in that first writing career now that I'm on BookTube. It's just a different medium.
Because you're a very eloquent speaker. And so it's clear that you've had a lot of experience. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I don't know. I feel like I ramble a lot. So I'm glad that I'm able to sometimes coherently get my thoughts across. But, yeah, exactly. Well, and that's the nice part was, I being on stage in front of sometimes very large crowds of people at a very young age. I had a head start in terms of getting over my trepidation at public speaking, which was a huge benefit, I think, that came out of that. and talking to a camera was just a different version of that, and just knowing that it was a slightly delayed audience response. So yeah.
So okay, so you wrote your book in November of 2019.
Yep, roughly.
And in January you launched your
channel. Yes.
So is that tied together? Like, did you do that in order to build audience, or it just happened to happen at the same time?
Yes and no. I mean, I kind of looked at it as like a side benefit, I guess, of having a channel, but I also wasn't anticipating having a massive audience right away. So it was just kind of like, I don't have a ton of people around me in the physical space that read the same type of books that I do. And so I really wanted to join the discussion about fantasy and about things that I was reading. I read a lot of historical fiction, which is something that my family delves into a bit more than fantasy, but I just wanted to be in a community of readers and find my people kind of as an adult. Because, I'm a young mom and I'm a creative, and I don't really have any in-person options at that point, other than, we do have a book club that we've been doing for a while with some college friends, but on a regular basis, there wasn't much there.
Exactly. That's why we've been so grateful to find the BookTube.
Oh my goodness. This wouldn't have happened without it, to be honest. Yeah. So yeah. Or it would have just been very delayed compared to coming out now. Yeah.
So what is your writing process? What does it look like? Are you a discovery writer or a planner, or
honestly, like, now that I kind of look back, and it's morphed over time as I've kind of tried different things and tried to discover what works best for me. The original series that I wrote back in college, I did outline quite heavily for.
Okay.
Comparatively to what I do now. And now I've kind of gotten comfortably settled into a process where I'm mostly a discovery writer, but I have the major emotional beats of a story before I write it. Like, I know the ending of Legends of the Bruhai trilogy. I know where I'm going, and I'm just kind of slowly working my way backwards from that.
Yeah.
And I write, and I let the characters kind of lead, and I figure out, oh, this would be really cool here. And I know I need to hit this beat at some point soonish. How do we get there? And then if I get stuck, it's usually one of two things. I don't know what is going to happen in the next scene, or I don't know the character well enough. And I address one of those two issues to get myself rolling again.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but I do a lot of brainstorming, and I'm very grateful to have an author circle that I can bother on a regular basis and just, okay, guys, I'm thinking about this scene, and what do you think about this? And I'm very much a talk it out kind of planner. Like, that side of the planning is very verbal for me.
Right.
So that's kind of the developmental edits that I do are largely in conversation.
Right. And while you were writing it,
yes,
you were sharing chapters and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yep. And that's helpful for me. I need that feedback right away.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That doesn't slow you down to a stop. Like, I would stop.
No.
I
mean, and that's where I think building your village and having people that you can really trust and it's the privilege of having people readily accessible.
Yeah.
When you build a writers group where we all have our chat, and we, like, anybody can post anything at any time and ask for feedback and thoughts. And we know that within hours, usually, if not less, we'll have, feedback, which is great. That's a like S tier option for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Kay has a suggestion for you. Have you ever considered text to speech to help with the writing process, considering that talk it out process you have?
I've thought about it. I'm definitely a creature of habit, and I've been writing on a keyboard in Microsoft Word since I was 12 years old. So I don't know, like, I'm such a stubborn creature of habit at this point. Even trying to make the jump to a program like Scrivener is like a massive ordeal in my head.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would do that for notes, I think, for sure.
Yeah.
But there's something where I I'm a control freak in the sense that I want to be the one typing out every single word because it slows me down and it makes me really consider every bit of the sentence I'm crafting. Because I kind of edit as I go.
Right.
And so by the time I finish a first draft, it's really like a draft 3 or 4 by the time I'm done with it.
Exactly.
Because I know so many authors do really well with just being able to get it out and just throw it on the page. Don't think about it. Don't edit yourself. Just go.
Yeah.
And they can definitely achieve a first draft a lot faster than I can. My first drafts takes forever because of that.
Right.
But I have a closer to finished product by the time I'm done usually.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's probably about the same amount of time. It's just approaching it in a completely different way. Yeah.
Which you don't have an editing background, but your first drafts are very clean.
I honestly attribute that just to the amount of reading that I've done, if I'm being totally honest, like, and the variety of genres that I've been able to read. And I was raised in a family that is very literary in the sense that books have just always been like, I grew up with my grandfather reading me Robinson Crusoe and like a lot of the classic type stuff. And that's just, like, I have a family that's very specific and bit of a perfectionist background. So I think that helps too. But yeah, I drove people nuts back in college because I would like see papers and things and be like, do you want me to edit? Can I?
Exactly.
So there is a little bit of that. Yeah. I enjoy editing. Yeah.
It's a very different brain space for me, so it's hard for like that's why I stopped editing his books, is because it took so much out of me, of another part of my brain, that it took away from my writing. I couldn't focus on my writing.
Yeah, well, you're not reading a book for pleasure, and reading with a more critical eye is a completely different experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, there was a long period when I was a professional editor that I couldn't read for fun, and that's when I started listening to audiobooks. Because then I wasn't distracted by the proofreading because otherwise I'd pick up, traditionally published books, all the books that I'm reading, and it's just like, oh my gosh.
It's kind of a balm to me now picking up traditionally published books, because that they've been through how many people. And there are still typos, and that's like, okay,
exactly, yeah.
Okay, we're okay.
We're doing great.
We're doing great.
I think one of the big steps for Indy was talking more about how you have to hire an editor.
Yeah.
If you want to be taken seriously, you gotta hire an editor, because that's what operates the
well, and working, what I found was that working with an editor, especially with my editor for Phased, she elevated that story so much compared to the original draft, and working with her elevated me in my own awareness of my writing style and my craft and my ability to catch more issues. So now Bloodstones, which it was a like incredibly cleaner draft than Phased was, because I tried to really soak in everything I was learning from my editor the first time around and be able to then, start at a higher level with the next one. So yeah.
Do you want to dive into Bloodstones?
You can talk about Bloodstones.
Yeah. You ready?
And Matt just got here. Matt 4, who just finished
Matt.
This morning.
Yeah.
Yes.
If I was at all creative, I would write the same way. Professors who require a draft of an essay were not my friend.
Drove me nuts.
Especially when those same professors wanted that first draft to be perfect. Like,
yes.
First draft.
Like,
Yeah.
Stuff.
Do you want a draft, or do you want the final product early?
Right, exactly.
So that you can tell me how you want it to end.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So, all right, I'm going to dive into Bloodstones. Here we go. There's a close-up of the cover.
It's
a gorgeous cover.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Shout out Sarah.
Yeah. So who's on the front there?
Okay, so
yes.
What I can say is that Garen, who is a character that you meet right away as you open the book, is on the front cover.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
I won't name anybody else on the cover.
Okay.
Just because it could be spoilery.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. So you wrote a book called The Bloodstones.
I did. Yes. That's what.
Yeah. And it has 4 points of view.
Yes.
Tell me why you like to write multiple points of view and why it's important to write multiple points of view.
I think it really, first of all, I think it really depends on the story that you want to tell. And like in Phased, I have 2 points of view that are both primarily in the same space. So it's not as necessary to like, pull back and add more points of view to the same story. And with Bloodstones originally, the plan was it was only going to be Garen. Garen is the only point of view through the entire trilogy. And I got to the end of chapter 3 and just hit a massive like block. And I couldn't figure it out. I was like, man, this is just, I don't like this. I don't know what's going on. Like something's not working here. And I realized that I was boxing the story in too much by keeping it only in Garen's point of view. And I said, that's not fair to the world that I'm building here. There's a lot more here than Garen can tell us. And adding these other points of view is going to add more impact to Garen's point of view, since he is kind of the central thread-ish through the trilogy. So yeah, the next one, I was like, okay, we have this very young character who knows very little about what's going on around him. And he's a child's view of the world, which is a beautiful, wonderful thing to write. But then I was like, I need something to contrast that. And so that's where Master Lowy came from. Master Lowy is an elderly scholar, and he is right next to the king. He knows a lot of what's going on in the politics. So where Garen isn't able to tell us as much about the political tension and the succession war going on in the story, when we shift over to Master Lowy, we're getting more of that side of the world. So those two were kind of an easy contrast choice. The third POV in the story is Zario, who is Garen's older brother, and he was kind of an accident in a way. He was a character in the original story, but I didn't know how heavily he was going to feature in this book until my then critique partner, who was also writing her book, she said, I love Zario in these first couple chapters. Like, I'd love to see a POV from Zario. So I originally wrote his first chapter just as a like, I'll just get, it'll be a fun like project on the side. And I suddenly realized how important Zario was to this story and how much I loved writing him. And it was then he was immediately, yep, we're going with Zario. And then the final POV, we don't meet until a little bit later in the story. And her name is Sindri, and she is a reckless, bloodthirsty, tribal horse warrior. And she is from a completely different country. So again, it was expanding the world to see, okay, so here's all this stuff happening in our main country. How is that rippling out to the countries around it, to someone who really has, at this point, no stake in the politics that are going on in Kitesh? And yeah, Sindri's very fun to write also. Yeah.
Where did she come from? Like so you mentioned you have a huge fondness for like K-drama. And
yes.
Korean drama, for those who don't know.
Yes.
And you can see that through the other 3 points of view. What about Sindri? Where does her inspiration come from?
Sindri is kind of, in a lot of ways, I think I've always loved, I have always loved barbarian type characters in a lot of the fantasy stories that I've read, and the juxtaposition that you can play with barbarian characters, with the hard and the soft parts of their character. I really, really love that invincibility and yet the vulnerability, like pulling vulnerability out of that, has always been something I love. I'm also, I have a very strong Nordic heritage. And so I've always been like, the Vikings have always been fascinating to me. So there's a little bit, it's kind of like if you took a little bit of Mongolian, like Genghis Khan kind of Mongols inspiration and melded it with Nordic. That's kind of where Sindri came from. and she's just kind of my love letter to the barbarian class in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I think this is aimed at you. You are the barbarian beanie queen.
Yep. I did a readathon, or was captain for a readathon back in April this year, and my team was the Beanie Barbarians, and
awesome.
the whole chat the whole time was for the Horde, and all that kind of fun stuff. So it was
awesome.
Yeah, it was fun. So yeah.
So you like we've talked before about how much we love motley crews.
Yes.
And so how did you put together your motley crew and decide who needs to be a part of it?
I think for me, motley crews are always the most interesting when all of the different players within that motley crew play off of each other in some way. Some of them are parallels, some of them are opposites, and you look around and you see, okay, I'm trying to build this group. What am I missing? And you start with your first character. What is he missing or she missing? And then you kind of bring contrast into that. And then you kind of add, and you start filling in the gaps of what types of personalities you're missing within that group. And the motley crew of boys that is on the front cover was built very much that way, where I was like, okay, I have a couple of noble characters. All right, well, I'm going to pull in a street urchin who has like this really rough dialect, and he has a completely different perspective on the world than these noble born boys do. And he's, out for himself because he's not going to get hurt by anybody, because that's the life he's lived up until this point. Whereas these other characters have had a much more silk and luxury kind of upbringing. Right. And then I had a couple of, okay, well, I want to bring in some cultures from outside of Katesh. So I bring in a Tekan Islander, which is from the islands outside of the main part of the continent. And one of the other countries has I'm bringing in a bunch of characters that just kind of add more, or expand the world a little bit more, but also add different personalities in this well-rounded group, hopefully. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. And it's fun to play them off of each other. Then once you get them all in a room, then you're like, all right, so where's the friction? Where are the unlikely friendships within that group? Like, because you're going to have the bestie pairs,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun to play with.
Yeah.
You did a bit of that. You did quite a bit of that in Phase as well. Just with a
did. Cast. It's a smaller cast, but yeah, there's definitely a motley crew in Phase. And it was a similar thing where you're playing off of, okay, what's the contrast to this? What does that look like? And yeah.
So are you the type who can write scenes that aren't included in the book just to have your characters talk to each other? Like, I've had people suggest that to me, and I'm like, I can't do that. It has to be in the book. There has
to be a purpose to it. I do have a few deleted scenes from Bloodstones. Especially there was a scene toward the end, which I won't spoil or anything, but there was a scene toward the end where I was trying to introduce something completely new to the story in one of the POVs, and I realized like this is too much. I don't need to bring this in yet. It's not adding anything, and it's actually like kind of rushing everything else. Yeah. So I pulled that scene and put it aside for book 2, and I'm going to come back to, okay, now I can bring this in because it doesn't need to be right now.
Right.
I'll pull sometimes bits and pieces there. I took the entirety of chapter 2 out. Andrew and I actually had a discussion about that when I first was writing it, because it was like a giant info dump that I just needed to get out of my system and then take it out and rewrite the chapter.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was a few things like that. I typically don't do that just as like a fun exercise, just because I'm very jealous of my writing time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, because, as a mom and I have other responsibilities, and it's just, if I'm going to have time to sit down and write, I really want it to be productive in terms of, not that that can't be productive, but I want to be working on the manuscript.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say that chapter is much cleaner, but also I remember reading that. And so I was like, wait, there's things wasn't there other information that was in this chapter last time I read it? Well, there was.
Yeah, there was. There's a lot more, but that's learning, like, as you go through your writing process. And we've talked about this a lot. Like, part of learning who you are as a writer is learning to critique yourself and learning to discern for yourself in this scene, what is the bare bones necessary. You can always add stuff in, but it's, learning to take things away and saying, nope, I don't need this. This is too much information and it's just burdening the reader at this point. If it's relevant later, you can always throw it back in.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
but never throw anything away. Put it in a
folder. Yep, that whole chapter I just lifted and put it in a different file.
Yeah. You have multiple versions, like, version 1, version 1.2.
Yep. So usually I have like multiple, I do, draft 1, draft 1.2, 1.3, and 1.4, I think I had. And then I had draft 2, and then I had the final draft. Okay. And I put them, when I'm editing, I'll put them side by side, and I'll actually take it paragraph by paragraph. Okay, what do I want to keep? Work on that paragraph, take a next paragraph, move it over, and then rebuild the next draft.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I'm a perfectionist in that way, where I'm like, okay, I'm going to take each little chunk and like dissect it and see if I like it. Still,
right. Well, that's a great example of editing as you go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I guess I kind of do the same thing where I'll dump everything in the new one.
Yep.
And then start at the top and then just drag up. So
yep.
I go kind of ironing as I go.
Yep. Give yourself some space in between what you've already fixed and what you haven't gone through yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Monique, who doesn't love a good Motley Crue?
I love a good Motley Crue.
What are some Motley Crues that have inspired you, Tori?
Oh, goodness. I mean, the Fellowship is an easy cop-out answer. I loved the Fellowship when I watched the movies.
I always think of Lamora, which I know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Love that. Red Rising has it's a more subtle Motley Crue. There is a Motley Crue in there, but I'm trying to think from The Outsiders is a huge inspiration for me. The movie, when I was younger, I saw it and I've always loved it. Johnny Cade is still one of my favorite movie characters of all time. And I read the book last year, and that was like, it was so good. It's S.E. Hinton can write a Motley Crue, man. But yeah, I think, like the movie King Arthur, with all of the knights. I remember seeing that when I was in my early teens, and I loved the bond of brotherhood of the knights and how they were all different, but the same in some ways. And so yeah, there's been a lot of just great Motley Crues that I can remember reading or watching and loving.
Yeah. Do you see that a lot in K-dramas?
Yeah. It depends on the K-drama for sure. My favorite K-drama, My Country, the New Age, which is on Netflix, and everybody should watch it. It's mostly, there is a Motley Crue, but the focus is really centered on a pair of best friends. And again, there's a contrast there because one is noble born and one is not. And there's a great contrast between the two of them. Yeah. But yeah, there's usually there's pretty good Motley Crue presence in a lot of the K-dramas.
Okay.
Yeah. They're very character focused too, which I like.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, is that how you would describe your books? Are very
much.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, as Andrew will attest, like world building is something that is important to me, but it's definitely secondary in terms of the characters. So sometimes, and that's where I love having a writer's group and beta readers who can be like, I need a little bit more of this. What is this? Because I'm just so like character, emotional moments, and the world is there as a supporting cast member kind of.
Yes.
But that's where it helps to have eyes outside of your own looking and saying, hey, this is an area of the world that I really think you could flesh out and would be cool. And
for me, that's a mark of a good fantasy is where I don't notice the world building and I'm invested in the characters, because whether it's fantasy or science fiction, whether it's an alien on another planet or whatever, there's that focal point where I'm like, okay, I identify with this character and the emotional bond there.
Yeah. As a reader, if I'm not hooked and invested in a character pretty early on, I mean, it can change over the course of the book, but I want a hook of a character specifically. Usually events don't do it for me as easily.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna be like, well, that's really cool, but I don't care about the people involved in it. So,
well, why am I still here? Yeah.
Why am I still here? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'm definitely not a plot driven writer or reader. The plot's important, don't get me wrong.
Right. Yeah.
That's not the focal point for me.
Right. Yeah. So would you categorize Bloodstones as slow burn or fast paced or somewhere in between?
It's interesting because watching everybody now that's had the advanced reader copies and my beta readers and that are getting through it. It's interesting because some people feel like it takes a little bit to get going. Other people have said that it starts off with a bang and just doesn't slow down. And so I think it really depends on the reader. I personally view it as, I think it's really important not to hold out on your readers. So I don't believe in holding all the good stuff for the end. Okay. So even though book 1 is obviously setting up a lot of things for the rest of the trilogy, I didn't ever want it to be a setup book. I didn't want it to feel like we were just waiting for things to happen the whole time. So there are some very big foundational moments for all of our characters that happen, and for some of them very early on in their POVs. So,
but it's still not a, like, you can't just read this one.
No.
It's the first.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could, but you'd probably be frustrated with the number of people that are the number of people that are mad at me that book 2 isn't readily available after reading book 1.
Right.
There's
and counting.
Yes, I'm very careful with cliffhangers. There is definitely kind of a cliffhanger at the end of this book. There's a big reveal first, so I feel like it's softened a little bit.
Yeah.
But I don't ever want to just put in cliffhangers for the shock value. So what I've been telling people is anything I do, whether it's an emotional gut punch or it's a cliffhanger or anything, I believe very strongly that you need to earn it as an author. Don't just throw it in there for a quick shock value or to catch your readers off guard. Earn it first. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. Hi, Anita.
There's certainly no avalanche at the end.
No.
Reveal, but not
right. I've read a lot of books where you kind of get to the end and all of a sudden it just is like this massive just tidal wave in the last 10-15%. And I don't know. For me personally, I enjoy spreading it out a little bit more so that you have kind of checkpoints throughout the series. And then it just keeps building the tension over a more natural, slow pace, not slow pace, but even, I guess. Yeah. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah.
Do you notice those as you're writing? Like, do you feel that, like, okay, no, this is the first marker, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny because I didn't know there were words for that.
Yeah.
And I still don't. Like, I have wonderful, amazing friends who know all about character arcs and beats and things like that in stories. And I'm just like, cool. That's great. Yeah. I don't know. Like, I don't consciously think about it when I'm writing because I feel like if I start, okay, I need this beat and this beat and this beat, and I start thinking about the structure of it too much, then my brain kind of goes, that's too, don't put me in a box. Like, I just want to get there. And if it's a beat, great.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So then I give it to other people and they tell me, oh yeah, you have this cool character arc and it's called this. Andrew. And I'm like, cool. And then I know what to tell people. Yeah. This character has a maiden arc. I know that now. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm always cautious with when I do that to you. Like, you know that's a queen's arc, right?
And I'm like, I didn't, but I do now. Yeah. And I think because, and that comes from just a awareness and a experience, I guess, in storytelling, I think, is for you being able to recognize those and for me being able to write them without really conscientiously thinking about it. Is we've just been absorbing those kind of stories for so long that it comes more intuitively. Yeah.
I think it comes with reading a lot. You start feeling those beats very naturally.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. You can start to feel, okay, we haven't had like a big thing for too long now. Like, you just kind of intuitively feel, okay, we're coming up to something I need to push here yeah.
So when you do your chapters, do you feel like, okay, I have to have like 2 scenes in this chapter or anything? You don't notice any of that. You're just like, nope, this is a good place to end the chapter.
Yep.
Yeah.
But you're still very consistent.
Yeah.
I mean, almost all of your chapters are approximately the same length.
Right.
Yeah. And I kind of was aware of page numbers when, like, that's the one thing I kind of paid attention to when I was writing is, okay, all of the chapters, except for a couple within Bloodstones, are between, I think, like 9 to 11 pages in Word. And I knew okay, if I'm getting a little wordy and have a bigger scene here, I'm getting close to that 11 mark, so I'm gonna need, and it's not a need to, like, I could have gone over, but I just kind of tried to have that as kind of a loose guideline for myself, just so it wasn't, because I get weirded out by sometimes when books have, like, here's a 5-page chapter and here's a 30-page chapter and here's so trying to keep them at least somewhat consistent was weirdly important.
That helps the reader. It helps.
It does. When I'm every few pages going, having to go to figure out how many more pages is this chapter. Then
you're like, wow, this one's a lot longer than all the other ones.
Right.
Yeah. Especially when you're reading to your kids and you've, like, established that this is what you're expecting, and then all of a sudden you're still going, and you're saying, how many pages is this? Wow. Oh my goodness.
After having ending. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Will that caterpillar finish eating?
Right. Exactly.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Question from Anitha. Miss Anitha Gade says, did you already outline the plot of the whole series, or are you just going where it takes?
In my head, I know how it ends. And I know some of the major, like the big moments for all of the main and secondary cast for the most part. Because secondary cast for me is equally as important as main cast. I want them to feel just as important and just as real and deep as the main POVs. So I think about, okay, where does this character end up? What is this character's arc? What do they need to learn, or how do they need to change? What is their full circle here? Mm-hmm. And so I kind of go through that. The ending I've had pretty much since I started working on the manuscript. I knew what the end goal was and just tried to, all right, so where do we need to start? But yeah, for the most part,
know where the second one is gonna.
The second one of the 3, I think, is going to take the most discovery writing and the most because there's a lot of moving pieces. There's a lot of military things going on. There's a lot of political maneuvering going on. So that one I'm probably going to have to outline a little bit more, just to make sure that I'm not missing anything with all of these very moving parts. Whereas in book 3, there's going to be a little bit less of that.
Right.
So yeah, book 2 is going to be a challenge, but I'm excited about it.
Yeah. Have you started writing it yet? Or
I have started a Microsoft Word document that has the title and draft 1 and then chapter 1. Or prologue. And I'm hoping to write the prologue, in theory, soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I don't want to lose the momentum.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So in theory, are you hoping to get them out once a year for the next?
That would be lovely. I'm not gonna lock myself into that because yes, in theory, I would love that. I would love to have Queen's Wolf out next year, and then, the final one the year after. But if, with all of these, and this is the first time I'm writing, the Bloodstones was the biggest book I'd written up to this point. Queen's Wolf is going to jump it up a level. So I want to make sure that I'm doing it justice, and I don't want to rush it. So that's the tentative yes. Yeah. But if I need to take more time to get it right, I will.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
That's one of the beauties of indie, right? Is that we can take our time and publish it when it's ready, instead of feeling this pressure to. And if it's done early, then great.
Yeah, because I would rather take a little bit longer. And that's one of the reasons why I appreciate what Pierce Brown did so much with his Red Rising series, because he was working on Lightbringer, which is the most recent one that came out. And then he just put it on pause and was like, to his fans, just said, I'm not doing the main character justice. This isn't the story that needs to be here. I need more time to split it, to reconnect with it and redo it. And he did. And I think that that's really important as authors, not to just, hustle through to get it out, is tell the right story and make sure that it's because once it's done, it's going to be there forever. So like taking a few more months now is not going to make a big difference.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Are you working on a sequel to Phased also? At one point you were. Yeah.
Yeah. So Phased is going to be a duology.
Okay.
And True Blood is book 2, and I do have a partial working manuscript for that I started a year or 2 years ago. So yeah, I'm kind of thinking that might be a good little break in between writing Queen's Wolf, if I need to go to a completely different world and characters for a brain break.
Or you can ride the wave.
Or right. Yes. So yeah, I think I'll probably end up working on them somewhat simultaneously.
Yeah.
Because I found in the past, I didn't do that with Bloodstones as much, but I found in the past that having multiple projects to kind of switch between can help when I get stuck on one.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Plus you're continuing your BookTube channel, right? We'll still be getting to that, or
yeah. Keeping up with the channel has been a challenge this last month with trying to get everything ready for Bloodstones, but I have no intention of going anywhere with BookTube. I love doing the content creation side of things, and it's been an amazing way to keep connected with the community and meet new people. And I've gotten to talk to so many authors and so many readers and reviewers, and it's a very cool social aspect of what I do, which I love. Yeah. So it makes it a little less isolating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm still, reading is still like I'm a writer, but I'm also just as big of a reader. So
yeah,
I still want to read and talk about books I love.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So on that subject, we always on BookTube will ask, what's your advice for new writers? I would like to ask you a different question. And that is, someone is joining the writing or BookTube community. What is the advice you would give them in order to best insert themselves into the community or launch themselves, whatever you want, but something on the subject of BookTube /community /Twitter /whatever you want.
Yeah. If you're going to be as a BookTuber, what I usually tell people is, first, network. And I would say that's the starting point for both writers and BookTubers is network. Comment on other people's channels, reach out to people, ask for advice, like ask your favorite BookTubers for advice. You'd be surprised how many people respond back. And just say, hey, I'm starting a BookTube channel. What should I know? Don't stress. This is a tough one. Don't stress about the numbers. Work on you will have a far better experience and far better support down the line if you build a community instead of following the algorithm, which can be hard because it's easy to see the big numbers and be like, oh man, if I just did these things, but you really focusing on the audience you're building and the type of people that you want to be talking to on a regular basis and sharing content with, I think is even more important. For writing, networking is my number one advice for new writers too. And also really take your time, because I think one of the pros and cons of especially the indie community is because everything's so incredibly accessible so quickly, it can be easy to rush a lot of things in that process. And I think it's important to make sure at the end of the day, you've taken your time, you've checked your boxes, you've really thought through what kind of legacy you want to leave with your book, because at the end of the day, our books are going to outlive us. And that's very cool, but it's also another reason why make sure that you're you've taken your time and really put out a product that you can look back on and be really proud of. So, and just, be in the community and meet people. You'd be amazed how many doors that opens for you. Yeah.
I mean, the fact that we've only known each other for a year is proof that time flies really fast in this community.
Really quickly.
Really. I look back and I think, man, it's been years. It's been a year and a half that pretty much most of us have kind of, at least in my circle, have been really active in the last year and a half. And so pumping the brakes for the first, it's only a month or two. It's okay. because you're gonna suddenly hit you're gonna get your foot in the door faster than you think. Because
absolutely.
As opposed to you got to get it out there.
Mm-hmm. And allow yourself to really learn from the people. Like once you get into the community, like you said, pump the brakes and start learning from people, because I can't tell you how many, like, Bloodstones is A, being published because of the community I'm in, and B, my acknowledgements page is like 3 pages long for a reason. Like there's so many people that have supported and inspired and, you know, picked me back up on the days when I was like, well, throw this away. This is like, I'm over it. I'm never writing again. Cause we all have those days. Andrew and I usually talk about having a quit day every once in a while. And you know, we kind of as a village pick each other back up and keep going. So yeah, like it's really, really important to build that village. It's easy to get isolated when you're writing, but it's not necessary. And it's going to be a lot better of an experience. And you're actually going to do more, probably faster with a village than you would without one. Yeah.
Speaking of which, we've got Anita and Kay over here.
having their I love it.
Question though, how do you have 30 hours in a day? Because I need that.
I don't sleep. Insomnia. Well, yeah. So a lot of it is priorities. Honestly, you know, my kids are at an age now where they can independently play and get their own snacks and, you know, things like that. So they know, like, I'm still in the house, I'm still readily available to them, but you know, they know mom's writing right now, and that's something that I've prioritized because I also want my kids to see me pursuing creative endeavors, and because someday they'll have their own. They already do. So yeah, prioritizing. And also no sleep, unfortunately, which is not helpful. Yeah. But I mean, some of the best scenes that I've ever written, in my opinion, are the ones where everybody else is asleep. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning and I'm slightly emotionally delirious, and it's a wonderful, amazing emotional scene. So, you know, there's that.
Do you find that your current emotions write the scene? Like I'll end up writing like an angry scene when I'm feeling angry. I'm like, oh, I should go jump over here and write the scene because I'm feeling it right now.
Yeah, and sometimes I actually find it difficult if I get to an emotional scene and I'm like, you know, there's something really heartbreaking or grief or loss or, you know, trauma happening, and I'm like, I'm actually having a pretty good day. I don't know about this right now, and I'll just kind of put it away. And yeah, I mean, my that's where the music side of things helps, though, because I have playlists for all of my books, and I have mood songs for each character. Like I have a theme for a bunch of my secondary characters that I can put that on and immediately connect with the mood of where that character's at, and that helps immensely.
Share that like as a list?
It's on my website.
Is it on your website? Okay, awesome. Awesome.
Yep, both Phased and Bloodstones pages on my website have a little scrolly Spotify thing on the left side. That is my playlist for each book.
Oh my gosh, that's perfect.
Is Sindri just Linkin Park?
Oh yeah, paper cut. No. Sindri, I listen to a lot of Nordic chant music, and I listen to a lot of like Middle Eastern and like Mongolian chants and throat singing. And so I kind of, again, that same kind of mashup of inspiration. And for the Katesh boys, it was a lot of like video games of like Sekiro and Ghost of Tsushima, and like a lot of those like Japanese inspired video game soundtracks. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yep. Some K-drama soundtracks.
While you're writing?
Do I what?
You have this actually playing while you're writing?
Oh yeah.
Really?
I can't write. I very rarely write in silence.
Okay.
Yeah. And sometimes I'll have the same song just on repeat for like 2 hours. Yeah.
If I need zero thought but music playing, it's just the Rohan theme.
Yeah.
Just on loop, and usually on a video. So it's just Flyover of Eteros, and I'll go do that for 3 hours straight, and that will keep me off of the internet and just write.
Yep. That helps a lot.
So Anita has a very good question for you. Andrew, are you audiobook narrating?
By the way,
right now. What are you working on?
I am currently, by the way, I'm the audiobook narrator for The Bloodstones, and I have recorded through half of chapter 22 of 33. So I've got, so I'm not to part 3 yet.
Oh, yes.
Part 3 is chapter 28.
Yes.
So I'm well on my way. I'm past the 60% mark of the recording wise, and I've mastered 9 or 10 chapters.
Okay.
I have to drop a few more in there. Okay. And then I'm going to finish recording before I get a cold. I keep saying that every week. I say before I get a cold, and I keep not getting a cold, so I keep recording.
Yes.
If I finish recording, then I'll go back and finish mastering the whole other 20 chapters so that Tori can listen to it and we can get it out to you guys. So I cannot promise the 28th, but even saying by January, well, before that. It's just a matter of
by Christmas.
If it's not by Christmas, I'll be very mad at myself.
Well, and that was something we briefly talked about on Kay's chat this week that I thought was interesting, because it's something that I really haven't heard anybody talk about, and that was that, Andrew, your performance of the characters is the first time I have ever heard what my characters sound like, because when I imagine the story as I'm writing it, it's all visual. And I didn't realize until I started talking to Andrew, I never hear anything because it's all in the music.
Really?
That's it.
Yeah.
So Andrew asked me, like, what voice actor or actress is somewhat like Sindri or Garen or whatever. And I had this moment of panic because I was like, I have no idea. I have no idea what they sound like. Zero.
Yeah.
And so that was a completely new experience so when Andrew sent me his reading each character lines just to see what we thought of them, it was hearing my characters speak for the first time. And that was such a emotional experience because I was like, oh my gosh, they're like coming to life in yet another aspect that I've never had before, because I've never had any of my books done in audio.
Okay.
So that's the first one. I want to read Phased. I want to record Phased myself at some point.
Yeah.
Down the pipeline.
Yeah.
But hearing Garen's small boy voice for the first time, it was such a surreal experience. It was very cool.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it was very cool. But I had never realized that I didn't hear anything. Yeah. It's all visual.
I do, because I hadn't thought about that, but I do. I hear what their voices sound like, even with having like somebody else read the book.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a certain way, like, well, when he did the Christmas one, we went back and forth on a lot of things.
Yeah.
But like, I have a very specific voice and a very very specific emphasis and all of that in certain places. Did you have that? Do you have is there a certain way you want lines written or read?
Yeah. Well, there's already been a little bit of back and forth. I have to go back and record a scene between Zario and
Garen and Kieran.
Kieran. And then I expect we're gonna have a back and forth because I reinterpreted King Canarian a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Previously,
that's exciting.
So we'll see if that lands. I made him a little older.
Okay.
Like the actor I talked about.
Yeah.
Who's plays Shogun in Shogun.
Yeah.
I read it more like that. And so we'll see. You may hate it. In which case, I re-record it. It's not a big
Probably
deal.
not.
I want it to be right.
Well, it was cool too because we went back and forth a little bit with the characters and I also I recorded a pronunciation guide for Andrew because there's multiple languages present in this story and different cultures, and so like the way that certain words are going to pronounce a consonant is going to be different than the way a different culture is going to pronounce it. So like in Katesh, the J sound is very ja, and in Sindri's culture, the horse culture, it's just ja, like it's a lot stronger. So even recording the pronunciation guide, it was like, okay, so making sure that I'm following my own language rules for each culture. And then trying to explain that to Andrew and giving him a very clear idea of how the words are said and how the character names are pronounced. And so it's
smart. notes to anybody out there doing audiobooks, especially if you're doing fantasy and you have a specific way to describe things, like you have to give your audiobook narrator a
well, and the way she did it was perfect too, because I have it up on YouTube in a different tab, so I pop over it if I'm like, wait, am I saying that name right? I go and check it, because Tori didn't just record it, she also put the words up on black screen, so I can scroll through on the YouTube
and find
okay, wait, it's this part where the boys' names are. Okay, what's that? Double check. Yep, I got that.
Well, right. I imagined like just dropping an MP3 file where I just say words for like 3 minutes would be incredibly unhelpful, because how would you find anything?
This was so very smart. Helpful. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was well, and now I have a pronunciation guide for anybody that wants one. So yeah. So I think there's one character that I found in going back through the book that I was like, oh, forgot to put her in there. Whoops. She's mentioned once. So, but she's still important.
Okay. The hero in her own story.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I mean, just out of curiosity with the narration, Andrew, when your art collaboration is such a cool, it's like a completely different type of creation than writing or whatever yourself. So for you, where do you find that balance of like what the author's vision is versus melding that with your own style and performance?
It's very different recording somebody else's books than it is recording.
I bet. Yeah.
Like I read my own books a lot faster. I shouldn't. Yeah. But that's the pace I set. Whereas reading yours actually has felt like a performance.
Yeah.
Where there's I have cadence where I'm actually changing cadence of suddenly there's this emotional moment and it's poetic. And so I read it as a different cadence than I do if there's a fight scene and I just start rambling this fast fight scene. I have to slow myself down. Nope, I wanted that fast, and then go back and do it a couple times to get it so it has the right impact, which I don't see a lot in a lot of audiobooks. You know, people will have characters and they'll have some emotion and intonation, but you don't see a whole lot of cadence shifts. And that's been a ton of fun to do, is to be able to play with cadence of when suddenly it's a hugely impactful scene, or like without saying names, the rite of passage scene.
Yes.
And that one needed to be set down and pulled in a very particular way, so it felt ceremonial, even though the narrative is still Tori Tecken's writing voice still happening, but it has to be slowed down so that it is an audible camera being used and setting the scene for what it is audibly as opposed to physically.
Right. Yeah.
Well, it came down and said that your writing style is so beautiful, so wonderful to read.
Thank you.
You made me cry.
I think the poetry background helps with that, to be honest. A lot, because I'm used to channeling that emotion into metaphors and like, so I think that helps. Also, I think with that style, it's almost more of like an audio drama than instead of, and actually it's not entirely true that this is my first book ever done in audio performance. Because when I was in college, my first fantasy book I ever wrote, called Ironheart, which I wrote when I was 16, I gathered a group of people because I was in the theater and English departments, and I gathered a group of people, and we actually showed up a week or two early to college my sophomore year, and we all used the Media Arts Center and we recorded. I had like 20 people playing different characters, and I don't know where any of my sound designer had all of those files, and I don't know where any of them are. I think I have bits and pieces of them, but that was just a blast. So like I voiced the main character, Ben voiced a character. I had a couple professors that came in and voiced characters for me. That was pretty cool.
So wow.
I want to listen to a few full out.
Oh, that's so fun.
Someone just announced one in the indie community who has one coming out, and they hired it's like a family, like a mother, father, and their kids are all teenagers, and they're doing all of the voices, and they hired
so much fun.
That's so cool. Like my first audiobook I ever listened to was The Godfather, and it was like unabridged, full audio drama with every voice was a different person, and it was just mind-boggling to me. And it's like,
yeah,
I imagine. Well, it was Puzo, so of course they could afford to do it, but
sure,
still was just. I would love to have unlimited resources to do an audio drama with music. That would be just the dream, to have a composer who could work with you and do full background music the whole time.
And have a full cast for all the characters. I listened to Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman, the audio drama of that with James McAvoy, Natalie Dormer, Benedict Cumberbatch is in it. It's incredible. And that was, I think, part of why I was like, oh, I heard that'd be really cool. I really want to do it. So I would love to do something like that again. That'd be fun. So future projects.
Yeah. We know enough people.
Yeah, exactly.
We gotta find the right musician. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
So speaking of future projects,
yes,
you have written Phased, Werewolves. You've written Bloodstones, Wolf Masks.
Yes.
You're writing True Blood, Werewolves.
Yes.
And Queen's
Wolf. Yep. Wolf. Yep. I see the pattern
here.
Wolf
projects? What future wolves do we have in the future?
You know, this is where my White Fang influence is coming through loud and clear right here. So when I say that White Fang was a huge influence on me, I think I've proven my point. I don't know, actually. So you've read it, but so Andrew, for those watching, Andrew and I were just in a anthology together called Advent of Winter that is 24 indie authors all writing short stories about the beauty of or danger of winter. That's coming out starting December 1st, etc. for the Advent calendar. And I wrote something completely new for that. And as yet, there are no wolves. But that character was my first person character, and I think I just hadn't found the right character yet, and I just started writing her, and it was like just flowed, and I was so excited about it. So I'm kind of looking at a series based on that world and that character that's kind of like the serialized Western novels from like the 60s to 80s. Louis L'Amour, Zane Grey, like they're a little bit shorter, but they're just these very punchy, episodic, kind of Western.
Fantasy though, still fantasy.
Yes, still fantasy, but it's going to be like a fantasy Yukon Gold Rush.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I was kind of leaning towards fantasy Western and trying to figure out what kind of where I wanted to land with that. And Andrew was like, Yukon Gold Rush, and I was like, there it is, perfect. So yeah,
I have a desire to write one of those as well someday.
Oh, they're so good. No. Well, there's not enough fantasy Yukon Gold Rush literature.
There's not enough Yukon literature, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm going to be watching a ton of documentaries. I can't wait. Yeah. I'm so excited.
Yep. Has Ken Burns done one?
I'm not sure.
Because if he has,
for sure. Yeah. So that's down the pipeline. I mean, I need to finish Legends of the Bruhai and True Blood, and then there's a second series after Legends of the Bruhai that I need to figure out what on earth is happening in there.
and that's not the end either, is it?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a big enough world. Who knows? Yeah. I could go. I mean, there's a novella that's going to sit between the trilogy and the second series that's going to go like 2,000-3,000 years back in the past and explain why magic is not readily accessible to everyone.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I've got definitely enough to keep me busy for a while. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. So where can we find you in your books?
Easiest place is ToriTecken.com, where you can find links to pretty much everything. I'm also on YouTube here as at Tori Talks 2, Twitter at Tori Talks 2. Tori Talks was already taken. I don't understand. But yeah, Tori Talks 2 on both of those. And I think that's also what I am on Instagram, which I'm almost never on. Apologies. But yeah, those are the easiest places to find me. I'm very active. So.
And your book is on Amazon and
yep. So
is it out an ebook for pre-order?
Yes, it is out on pre-order for ebook on Amazon right now. So if you just type in Bloodstones Tori Tecken, you'll find it. And then on my website, ToriTecken.com, there is a option for signed pre-orders. So I will be shipping out signed pre-orders probably about the second week of December. to everybody that wants one of those. And then it will be available in ebook and paperback November 28th and audiobook shortly after.
And I would say, even if you're planning on buying a signed copy, you should still also order the ebook, because I think we're going to get you up to military #1, military sci-fi.
That would be amazing,
because that would be pretty darn cool.
Yeah, I'm already like in the category, like at a fairly good spot, so that would be pretty cool. Goals.
Yep. So get those pre-orders in.
Yeah.
Yep.
Pre-orders in. Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for joining us today, Tori.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yes. And everybody go out there and pre-order it right now, because it's going to be awesome. We're so excited.
I'm so grateful for all of the support that it's been getting so far. I'm really, it's pretty surreal, as you guys know, to see people falling in love with your world and your characters. So it's pretty cool.
The hardest part is letting go. Once
you
publish it, and you're like, oh, now you're getting something else out of this. Okay.
Yeah. That's always I hope that my books are such that people can, bring their own experiences into it. And but there's sometimes every once in a while I'll hear a comment about it that I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Incredible. The life of a book is really it's mystical.
It's interesting. Yeah, it's very cool to watch.
Yeah.
So
all right, thank you everybody for joining us in the chat and watching live, and if you're catching this later, thank you so much for watching, and be sure to go pick up a copy of the book. And all right. And happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving. Bye everybody.
Bye.